Happy Tuesday.
Oh, don't you dare look back, just keep your eyes on me. I said you're holding back. She said shut up and dance with me. This woman is my destiny. She said ooh, shut up and dance with me. We were victims of the night.
Hello and welcome to episode 40 of KnitScents. My name is Jan and you can find me as Jan Ellen RN on Ravelry and on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/KnitScents, I think. And we also have a KnitScents podcast group on Ravelry, so I hope you'll come and join us over there. We're starting a New Year's knit-along cal, which some of us are doing in the Comfort Fade Cardigan by Andrea, Mowry, but I'll get into all of that later. But you can join us with whatever you're knitting. I hope you will. Oh my goodness, it has been a whirlwind weekend and I am still recovering from it. So I'm a little discombobulated. I posted last night. I was hoping to get, actually I posted it this morning. I'm sorry, I was hoping to get it up last night, but I had to do some extreme editing. Somebody was wearing a somewhat inappropriate t-shirt and I didn't realize it. And well, needless to say, the episode didn't go up till this morning. But if you watched, there's an episode, it's KnitScents Vlogs, Vogue Knitting Live New York City. And that's where I put all of the footage and the pictures that we took from Vogue Knitting Live. So that's up on the channel and also on the blog. So, because I didn't want to make this episode any longer than I think it's going to end up being anyway. And I like I said in my vlog, I know from myself there's only just so much of me I can take. I didn't think you'd be able to take that much of me in one sitting. I know I couldn't. So I split it up. So if you want to see some of the live footage that we took, just click on the episode KnitScents Vlogs, and then it says Vogue Knitting Live New York City. What I did on the channel, I didn't make a separate one. It just kind of seemed kind of silly to me. So some of the episodes is just the sequential episodes that are like the typical, podcast episodes. And then I've been taking my camera with me and kind of shooting things that either are knitting related, maybe not knitting related, but just sort of fun things, taking my camera on the go. Mostly so that I can learn how to use it. God help me. And that's been a lot of fun for me. You do kind of get over a lot of your inner, what do I want to call it? Inhibitions by walking with a camera and talking to yourself. Now, granted, in the city, that's not a big deal. Nobody would even notice you. But for some of us introverts, it's really kind of putting yourself out there. So it's really been a lot of fun doing that. Anyway, so yes, this past weekend was Vogue Knitting Live. We went in on Friday. I was late as usual not because my plane was late, not because traffic, but because I overslept. So I barely made it into class, no excuse. And Friday, it was 60 degrees. It was literally steamy because we still had all the snow on the ground. So the ground was like ice and snow, and the air was just thick and humid and hot. So there was this humid fog situation going on. So I figured, all right, it's going to be okay. We'll just be moderate temperatures all weekend. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. By Saturday night, I think it was 19 degrees. And of course, I wasn't dressed for it, even though it was a knitwear event. So it was just a great weekend anyway. A great time was had by all, and I will go into all of that. We'll talk about the classes that I took, my probably really over excessive haul. Yeah. The restraint that I showed at SSK and at Rhinebeck and Maryland Sheep and Wool went out the window at Vogue Knitting. It just did. But anyway, why don't we start off with what I still have on my needles and what I'm knitting on, and we'll go through all of that stuff because there really isn't much. I do have some finished objects. I have been adhering to my New Year's goal of finishing up whips before starting something new and finishing what I start. And I've really been kind of reveling in that. You know, it's really been liberating. I'm getting stuff done. It's kind of like little weights as I get these FOs finished, or should I say UFOs because they've been hanging. It's like weights being lifted off my shoulders, you know, and reclaiming back all my toys. I want my stitch markers and my needles. I remember I don't know, again, my mind's going off somewhere else, but in a recent podcast, I was saying, I don't know what happened in my 40-inch cord. I think I was going to use it for my cardigan. And I said, I don't have anything that's 40 inches. Well, I did, and I found it, and I will show you because I finished it. So why don't we start with what's on the needles, and you've seen it before. My first thing up is my Birds of a Feather. I really was hoping to get it finished this weekend. You'll see why I didn't, because I finished 2 other objects that were on the needles. But I did get a lot of progress done on it, and it is just about finished. So here is my Birds of a Feather, and this is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. And if you remember, I am knitting this out of, okay, squeaky chair noise. Oh, God, I swear, I think it gets worse with every podcast. I really do. I don't know if somebody's like putting gum on the bottom of these chairs, but that noise is really awful. All right. Oh, gosh, my back. All right, what is it now? 6 minutes in, and I've griped and complained for half of that. Done. Okay, I'm over it. Here is my Birds of a Feather. This is a shawl pattern by Andrea Mowry, and I did take a class. I took 2 classes with her. I'll get into that. What a sweetheart. But I did get to see all of her samples, and I did get to see this. Her original Birds of a Feather was on display at the Do You Knit booth. And it was just, oh, am I so glad I knit this. But anyway, here's where it started, way down here. And I am at the end. I am at the border. So let's see. I think I'm at the end of the row. So let's try to get this thing off my needle keeper. And I only ran into one, I'm going to say it was a minor problem because to me it's not a big deal. The border is basically supposed to be, it's just a garter stitch border, but it's supposed to have alternations, like every couple of rows you throw in a ridge, a garter stitch ridge of the mohair. But I did run out of the kids silk mohair. I'm doing, like I said, the skinny singles and the kids silk mohair in hedgehog fibers in the colorway Zephyr. And it was funny because when I was at the Do You Knit booth, I just kept picking up skeins of Zephyr. I don't know what drew me to this color, but I just kept picking up skeins, and I'm like, that's Zephyr, that's Zephyr. I'm looking for something different, and I kept picking it up. But anyway, I did run out of it. It was funny because I was just past the first 2 rows in the border of the mohair, or up to that border. And I was playing Yarn Chicken, and I knew it. And I took the whole thing to one of my classes, and I brought it to Andrea, and I said, I'm playing Yarn Chicken. And she said, that's my favorite game. And I'm like, well, I don't like it because I usually lose. You probably win. But she looked at it and said, no, you probably don't have enough to finish it. But I do have a lot of the skinny singles left, so that's what she suggested. So that's just what I'm going to do, is just knit the border in skinny singles. No one's going to know the difference. I know I personally don't care. I just want this done at this point. So I think it's like 4 repeats of 8 rows, something like that. And I think I'm on the third repeat right now. I think I just started the third repeat. And it's just basically back and forth in garter. It's just a garter border, and then I'm going to bind off. So this will, I'm saying it now, that means it has to happen. By the next time I podcast, this will be in FO. So yeah, it's almost finished, and I love it very, very much. I will tell you the story of my grabbing mohair at the last 15 minutes of the show later on. Whether or not I do it with another one of these or add it into something, I was so inspired by her class and the color that I just had to grab more mohair. So this is almost an FO, but it's not. It's we still have to call it a whip, but it's almost done. So that is one, and really the only other thing, and I haven't actually been working on it. I've really only been working on that since I finished my other two. And because I want that done, that's what I'm focusing on now. I'm going to get it finished. But I did start my Comfort Fade Cardigan. Excuse me while I get down to the floor here and grab it. I'm not even sure where I was up to. I got a late start today, so I don't know how many interruptions this is gonna have, especially because this probably is going to end up being a long episode. I'm going to try to rush through this and make it a little shorter. But anyway, what I was saying, I don't remember where I was on the Comfort Fade Cardigan, and I kind of did put it aside so that I could finish one object that has been on the needles for a long time, and another object, and there was a reason why I wanted to finish it, but I did get a little work done. I'm actually on to the first fade. I'm right in the middle of the first fade. So this is where I'm at. Let me take a look at the yarn I'm using, because I have no idea. Okay, wait. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, but I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Prepared as I am, I just saw it. Tot Le Matin. Yeah, Tot Le Matin Yarns, if you can see it there. Beautiful colorways. I believe this is a DK weight. I'm going to say it's a DK weight. I could be totally lying and it's a worsted weight, but I believe it's a DK weight. Whatever the pattern called for, that's the weight I'm using. The colorways that I'm currently using, I am not going to butcher. I'm just going to show them. So that's one. That's my color B that I'm just bringing in now, and this was my color A. I'm not even going to go there. That's the name of color A. So I'm at my first fade, and this is reverse stockinette. And having taken Andrea's class in Color Confidence, she really went into different ways of blending colors and fading versus marling versus striping, and it made it very clear. She explained why the Comfort Fade Cardigan is done in reverse stockinette, and that is because, and again, my yarns are not very high contrast. Probably later, I'm probably getting sick from this weather. It was 60 degrees Friday, 19 degrees Saturday. It's in the upper 40s, mid 40s something, and it's supposed to snow. I don't know. Anyway, this you can see is going to have more of a contrast. But the point that she made was that when you when you fade in stockinette, the line of demarcation is a little more obvious than it would be on the reverse side. And she didn't want that in this design, so that's why this is a reverse stockinette cap. So this actually is the right side. This is the top. I explained my little marker last time, but I still can't get over it. I think it's so cute. So again, I didn't make too much progress, but I did get a little bit done. I did put it down to get some other things finished and off the needles. But once that Birds of a Feather is finished, I will go at this with vengeance because I want it done. Because I got one for another one of her sweaters that I saw her wearing, but I'll go into that. So that's really all I have on the needles. I have been working on my sock, which I know I've shown. It's the Bing Crosby and the Andrew Sisters plain vanilla stockinette sock. It was my doctor's office knitting. Where did this come from? Okay, I'll put it back on because you know where I'm going to find those stitches if I don't. Anyway, so I didn't bring down the socks because A, I had enough to hold down, and B, there really wasn't much difference to show. I just like to keep a sock on the needles. You all know how that goes. So that's pretty much it for works in progress. I will show I collected a whole bunch of those enamel pins. They're everywhere now. But I just wanted to quick show this one. I know I've shown the rest of these before, but I did order one and it came from Legacy Arts. Legacy Knits? Legacy Arts, whatever. Legacy Knits? I'll have to put it in the show notes. But that one came. So I added that one to this collection of stitch markers. So that's it for my works in progress, really, and that's it. But I have a bunch of finished objects, a couple of finished objects, and one of them I'm really proud of picking back up again and doing. If you were with me from way back, you might remember that I took a Craftsy class with Gudrun Johnson, and it was the Shetland Hap Shawl. And I started it, and I loved it, and I did a Shetland Hap Shawl is done traditionally in a certain construction. It's a garter stitch square. It has a border that's done in different colors, and she was explaining, and I don't remember whether it goes from light to dark or dark to light, whatever. In the old shale pattern, which we know is feather and fan, and then it has an attached lace border. I'm trying to remember, I think I might have shown this in the last podcast last week. I'm not sure while I was still working on it. I don't remember. But at any rate, it's finished. I didn't block it, but I wove in every one of those ends. I am so proud of myself. I never weave in ends. I wove them all in, but as she had suggested, I didn't trim them because I hadn't blocked it. And this will need to be pretty vigorously blocked. This kind of yarn does tend to block very well, and you can pull on it quite a bit. So I didn't want the ends to pop out because I'm not the best at weaving in. But part of the reason why I wove it in is because you join the colors right here where there are yarn overs, and they look terrible where you join the colors, and you fix them actually as you're weaving in. You tighten up the yarn over, but I couldn't grasp it in my head that it was going to look better. So before I blocked it, I really wanted to tighten those yarn overs up. Otherwise, I think I would have just ended up with a big mess and ended up weaving them in and then having to reblock it. And that seemed even worse than weaving in the end. So that part I did. It is all finished. I'm back here somewhere. I can't see how much you can see. Let's see if I stand up. If it can show any better, but there it is, my Shetland Hap Shawl, and as you can see, it's just really a square, and I love it. I am so happy that I went back and finished it because I know I'll enjoy wearing this. It's a beautiful pattern. It is not difficult at all. I'm just going to sort of pop it on unblocked so you can get an idea of the size, but this is going to grow. This is going to grow quite a bit. So I think it'll be a really nice piece to wear. The yarn I used was Jamieson and Smith, I believe. It was definitely Shetland wool from Shetland, and it has that sheepy Shetland feeling. I'm going to say it's not scratchy or itchy, but it's definitely more textured, I would say, than, say, a merino wool. But I do know from experience that these things wash and soften amazingly, and they become just these like snuggle, warm, cuddly garments. So, like I said, I cannot wait to block this. My biggest issue these days is where do I block something that the cats aren't going to rip out and pull and everything else. So that's really kind of the reason why I haven't blocked it yet. But I'm happy that I finished it. So that's one finished object and one UFO from the crypts that's done. And the other thing I finished, and I don't even know if I know I had shown it at one point. I don't remember when. But I had purchased, and I know I did show it on here at some point, was the Strict Planner, which is a day planner for knitters that was designed by Martina Bean, who I also took a class with. And I really was hoping to get this done before the class. I ended up getting it done the night after the class. It's typical me running, day late and a dollar short. But I did get it finished, and I'm so, so happy that I did. Couple of things. First of all, I did order from her shop the label, which doubles as a pin loop. I'm embarrassed to show this. I am. I'm embarrassed to show it, but I'm going to show it anyway. I couldn't find any white thread when I came home, and all I wanted to do was sew this label on and call this a day. I didn't have any thread, so I sewed it on with dental floss. Seriously, could it look any worse? I'm like, you spent all this time knitting this thing, and you sew the thing on, do a crappy job with, and if you think that side's bad, the inside is even worse. I mean, come on. But you know what? It worked, and if it works, don't fix it, right? But anyway, I did finish it. Now, I had read a lot of the notes, and a lot of people had trouble or found that their book cover, they really had to block it vigorously and stretch it to fix the book. And the directions, actually, had I followed them, mine would fit probably better. It's constructed in a way where you are not going to realize that this actually is going to function as a book cover until you're nearly finished. So it was kind of hard to kind of imagine, but if I had followed it literally, it would have fit better. But I erred on the side of caution because I didn't want to have to yank it and pull it to the point where it just didn't fit onto the book. So mine actually is a little bit big. So I didn't block it. And it really kind of does need a blocking, but it's a book cover. I mean, really, who's going to notice? So let me take it off the book, and I'll kind of explain how it works. Let's get that thing off there. What you do, and it's really, when you have it's a free pattern, by the way, on Martina's website, I think, which is, it's stripmic.de, and I think you just pick the English version or the German version, but it's called One for the Books, and if you just search for it on Ravelry, it'll come up and it'll send you to where you can download the pattern. What you do is you start in the corner with Judy's Magic Cast On, and you knit in the round up until like here where this little pocket part ends. This actually is all knit flat. The entire rest of this, even this corner here, all of this is then knit flat back and forth. So the only thing knit in the round is one corner over here, and then all of it is knit flat until you get to the opposite corner where you rejoin again in the round and knit the other little pocket. And somehow or another, you end up with the four corners, and the two inside flaps that actually hold the book and hold your book in place. So you can adjust this to any book because she tells you when to start, that you put it on the book and you knit back and forth until it reaches X point, or I don't remember if it was the opposite corner or the opposite side, until it fits stretched. And then you change and go the other way, and miraculously, I don't know, it just fits the book. But again, like I said, I didn't want to have to stretch it too far because I've heard a lot of people ran into trouble where the book cover did not fit the book very well, and they had to really stretch it. So I don't know how much they pulled on it to get it to the other corner. But you know what? It's really, honestly, it's not all that big. It fits. I'm happy with it. I love it. I love the planner. I actually did start setting it up. There are, you can see I put all my classes and stuff in here. Now, I'm a planner girl, so I do have a day planner that I use for everything. This one I use strictly for knitting. I have in here knitting goals, things I want to work on. There are sections for projects to take. I took all my notes from class. I took in here. And again, it's strictly, it's a day planner, and week planner, day planner. It's a German company that she went to have this made. It was a planner that she had been using and added on, basically, pages for knitters. If you are interested in it, I know that the original run sold out. But she had originally, when she got the stock, there were some B stock that were not perfect. And originally they were not going to sell them, but the demand was so great that they did release the B stock that they say, if you look on the website, has like beauty marks. From what I've heard from people that have ordered those, they can't even find them. They're little minor flaws. And it does say they are completely functional. It's not like there's a cover missing or half the pages are missing. It's like a little mark on it or something that you probably wouldn't even notice if somebody pointed out. So if you are interested, I know there are, as of last night, there were still some available of the B stock. So if that's something that you're interested in and getting that planner, again, I keep mine strictly for knitting. And it's great because I can keep track now of what I have of UFOs that I want to work on next, of what projects I want to cast on next, instead of just going off all over the place, which is how I've been knitting for 40 years and accomplishing really either very little or nothing. And that's how I ended up with a closet full of whips, which I frogged most of them, and I'm now trying to whip down. So those are my two finished objects. Which brings me to a Vogue Knitting Live recap. It was amazing. I just have to take a drink because it's so dry. Let's see. We got there Friday, barely in time for me to make my first class, which was Beyond Brioche Basics with Andrea Mowry, who I have to say is just a sweetheart. First of all, she's adorable as could be. She's just totally adorable. As adorable as she looks in the pictures, she's even more adorable in person. She's funny. She is energetic. She brings that to her classes. There's just an energy and a vibe that you get from her. And I loved it. I loved her classes. I loved her. I love her color sense, her style. It was amazing. If you ever have the opportunity to take a class with her, do it, because she really, I think she teaches from the heart. And I have to say, I mean, I've taken a lot of classes over the past few years, and I don't think I've ever taken one that was bad. I can honestly say I don't think I've ever taken a class that was bad or that I didn't get something from, because I always try to get, something. There's always something to learn, even if it's a class you know most of the stuff in. Maybe it's a different way to slip knit. Maybe it's the tiniest little thing. You know, you enrolled in it and you didn't realize you knew most of the stuff already, but there's always something that you can pick up. But sometimes you get a teacher that you kind of feel has taught the class so many times that they're not really bringing in a new energy. You understand what I'm saying? This was not the case. I mean, she was open to what first I'm going to talk about the Brioche Basics class and Beyond Brioche Basics, and she was just so helpful and broke it down into such a way that what to some people seems like an utterly complicated, almost impossible, I'm not even going to attempt it stitch, into something that was beyond understandable. It was like, why did I think this was so hard? It's not. And that I think is a gift. That is a gift of a teacher. When you can take something that either appears complicated or people think or shy away from and break it down into a way to get it across that makes it so simple, that's a gift. So what we did was we learned lace, or how to do lace, in brioche. And this is my little sample, and it would be bigger if I was paying better attention and didn't have to rip it out. And it was funny because she went around the room, and fortunately she started on the other side. And we all know my mind tends to wander, and my head was somewhere else. And right when we got to the big one, which is the big decrease. And I'm not going to say it's complicated because it's not, but you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Brioche, I actually now, and once you really learn how to do it, you can just get into your own rhythm. Even with the simple increases and the decreases, but there's one large decrease, which you can see, it's right there, where you kind of have to, until you really have done a lot of them, pay attention, and I didn't, so I had to rip back like most of the swatch. And by the time she got around to me, I had gotten most of it knit back up again, and she was like, how's it going? And I'm like, well, the good news is I didn't let out any swear words in the middle class. But the bad news is I haven't gotten to the big one yet. But I did, and I actually, she had written it out so clearly. I knew when I got home, just from her explanation and from the way she had broken it down on the sheet that she handed out, I knew I'd be able to do it. So here it is, and this is what lace in brioche looks like. And you can see basically what happens is your rows of stockinette will twist and turn, and you'll be starting new ones. And the way she kind of puts it is like you're marrying your little couples of stitches, and then they have these little baby brioche stitches. And it, again, as brioche is totally reversible, which makes this just an awesome, awesome stitch to learn. What I can say, and Andrea did also very highly recommend to those who were in the class that really didn't have a basic brioche foundation, which you kind of really needed, even though she did explain basic brioche in the class, you kind of really have to have a pretty good handle on it. When you start to do extreme, I don't want to say extreme lace, but when you're doing the bigger increases, like increasing 6 stitches, as opposed to just increasing 1 stitch into 4. When you're doing, increasing 6 stitches or decreasing 5 stitches, you really kind of have to have that foundation. You have to be able to see and know what it's supposed to look like. So what I would suggest is, if this is something that you're interested in doing, is Nancy Marchant. She told us how to pronounce it, I don't know. Nancy Marchant has actually I think she has several brioche classes available on Craftsy. And I highly recommend them. I did take it, but I had already learned brioche by doing a Laura Nelkin pattern, which did do some of these increases and decreases. So like I said, for me, it was really a matter of kind of just following along, and once she explained it the way that she did, I knew I would be able to follow the pattern at home. And now I kind of just want to jump into some of her more intricate patterns and do some really lacy brioche, but I'm stopping myself. I'm not going to do it. I have a plan and I'm going with the plan and I'm sticking to it. So that was the first class, was Beyond Brioche Basics, and that one I took on Friday. Friday night was when the market opened, and the market was open Friday night if you had enrolled in classes or if you had purchased a weekend ticket. So in other words, if you only came in or bought a ticket for either Saturday or Sunday, you were limited to that day. But if you bought a weekend ticket, then you could come to the marketplace Friday night. It was open from 5 to 8. Or if you bought a package or purchased a class, you automatically got into the 3-day market, which was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we did go to the market Friday night, which you can see again on my vlog. I don't know, but to me, I think Friday night was more mobbed and crowded than even Saturday was. Now, to be fair, I had a class Saturday morning, so I didn't get to the marketplace until Saturday afternoon, so maybe it had calmed down a little bit by then, but Friday night was crazy, but crazy in a really good way. And I'll get to the market in a few minutes. But so Friday night we did the market, and then Saturday morning I took a class with Martina Beam on invisible cast-ons and bind-offs. So basically it was provisional cast-ons and how to do them, and bind-offs. Now I've done a lot of provisional cast-ons before, and I have grafted before. And like I said, in any class that you take, you can always learn something. And Martina is, first of all, she's so sweet. She is just such a sweet lady. She really, really is. She's very shy, which is, for someone, I mean, I think half of us were starstruck. And she was so shy that it was almost like, funny, because we were like, I don't know, I was all fangirl. I think that probably scared the pants off of her. But she was really, it took her a little bit, but once she warmed up, you could tell she just is a lover of knitting. Her designs, we all know, are amazing. But even having known and done crochet cast on before, I've crocheted onto the needle before, I learned. And first of all, I usually crochet my provisional cast on onto the needle and then knit the first row, which can be tricksy because sometimes that, it's when you're starting and you're trying to pick up those bumps as you go along. She showed a way to pick up the bumps from the back without knitting. And if you pick them up from the back, that puts the right leg in the front, and then you knit the row, and all is good with the world. To me, that was worth the price of the class alone. So that was one thing. The other thing was, I have grafted in garter stitch. I do the Kitchener stitch just by rote, by memory. I do that thing in my head, that poem, and she said, and her goal was, she didn't really get into Kitchenering in stockinette. She was more geared toward Kitchenering in garter, but she did these grafts, these blocks in white, and then grayed out some of the stitches. The point was, she was showing the construction of the knit stitch and the construction of the garter stitch, because her goal was, I don't want to teach you a poem that if you forget it or you make a mistake, I want you to understand why you're doing it the way that you're doing it, so that you can see where you should be going in and where your bumps and your bumps should lie. Should your bump be in the back in garter, or should your bump be in the front when you're Kitchenering in garter? So even though I got lost trying without, I have to use a video when I Kitchener in garter still. But now that I have that graft and an understanding of why I'm doing what I'm doing, I think the next time I won't need that anymore because I will understand why the garter is different from the stockinette and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think that made the world of difference. Unfortunately, some people left in the middle of class before she got to that part. And I think that was kind of their loss, because that was really the nuts and the bolts and really the takeaway from the class was, you know, anybody could really Kitchener in garter or stockinette if you're watching a video or if you're following a poem or whatever. I think the important thing is to understand why you're doing it and the construction of those stitches. And she actually made us color in on a stockinette diagram and on a garter stitch diagram, color in the direction of the stitch so that you got the feel with your pen of how you were going to go, and then you go with your needle and you get it. So that class was totally great. I loved it. I learned a lot in that, and I have to show she was so sweet. I think she was like more stunned that I wanted her to do it. I mean, she was like, "You want me to sign your book?" I'm like, "Yeah." So she was very gracious. She signed my planner, which is why I really wanted to have the book cover done by then, but I didn't. And just in the back, Andrea Mowry also signed my book, which, oh, I was so thrilled. So, I mean, my strict planner from 2017 will go in my archives. I will never get rid of this book. But that was Saturday morning. Saturday, again, we did hit the market. We did go out Saturday in search of food that was somewhere. Actually, it wasn't even food. We went out looking for something to drink that was like less than a $10 soda. We ended up, this is Manhattan, we ended up paying $3 for a bottle of soda, which in Manhattan isn't so bad, but it was freezing outside, freezing. And neither one of us was dressed really appropriately. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So we decided, no, I think we're just going to stick in the hotel. There was a Starbucks in the lobby. I was a happy camper. Sunday morning, I didn't have to leave the hotel in that freezing cold air. Went in there, got my coffee. I was a happy camper. So that was Saturday. Sunday, the market, I don't even know what time it closed. Maybe it was 5:30, 6:30, something like that. But I hit the market in the morning. And then I had my last class on Sunday, which was Color Confidence with, again, Andrea Mowry. And I'm just going to look for a second because my daughter was looking at it before. She's like, "What's this?" And it actually was my swatch, but, oh, here it is. Okay, good. Right on the top. And this, again, was not so much of a how to do it. I mean, because her patterns explain when you go download her Find Your Fade or Comfort Cardi or Free Your Fade, any of her fade or a pattern that has marling in it, they tell you, hold this strand together, hold that strand together. This took it further. And what she did in class was explain why things look the way they do. And she did bring out a color wheel, which I at some point probably will go back and try taking a better look at a color wheel. I don't know why I seem like I'm sitting here in the dark. Gosh, it's dark in here. Hold on one second. I'm going to try turning the light on. Let's see if that helps at all. Probably not, because these lights are, my house is like a tomb on a good day. All right. Anyway, we experimented. And for the class, we brought in bits and bobs of different colored yarns. Anything you had in your stash. It didn't have to be wound, little leftover skeins or a skein that you really wanted to use. And I had all of those skeins from that tragic marled shawl that didn't work at all together, and I ended up throwing it out. And I think I understand better now why it didn't work. And I ended up, this is the sample that I did. We started on the bottom with a marling technique, which was holding 2 yarns together, dropping one and keeping one constant. And here you could see it was the orange that I kept constant. Now here you can see this is a very high contrast change. Here, from here to here, this actually is 2 different yarns in the second strand, and I marled this way. And I think that was what was bothering me as much as it did in the other shawl that I ended up tossing. If you want a high contrast, then holding 2 strands together, if your second strand that you pick up is a big contrast from the one that you're dropping, you're going to get that line and you're going to get a high contrast. Now, if that's what you're going for, that's fine. But if that's not what you're going for and you want a more subtle marling effect, then you need to pick a second strand that's more along the lines or in the similar or same tones as the first one. This was a very white. Had I picked another white or something with maybe a little less white but still had white in it, like maybe had I gone with this second color here and used it down here, that would have blended in a little better. And again, it's not that it's right or it's wrong. And some people may have really loved the one that I just couldn't. To me, it was just all over the place because I didn't have a plan going in. I didn't. I just was picking random colors that had no rhyme or reason. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with that, but my random colors sense was really off and it didn't look right. Now here, what I did, now first of all, these 2 colors, I would never have thought to put together. And I had them sitting there and I said, you know what? What's the worst that will happen? It's a swatch. And I love them. I love them. I'm going to try to see if I can pick out which 2 of the colors it was. It was this, the orange and a dark burgundy. They were both solids. It was these 2 colors. Grab these. I would never have tried marling these 2 colors. I wouldn't have thought. But if you look on the color wheel, you would have known. I couldn't read a color wheel, so it wouldn't have made any sense to me. But what it ended up coming out as was this, which I loved. I thought it looked great. And then when I dropped it and went with this sort of more pinky with a little bit of white in it, you could see how well it flowed together. And what I did here was I held 2 strands of sock weight yarn and added in 1 thread of mohair. And like Andrea had said, and I asked her, can you do that? Do you drop and use just 1 fingering and 1 mohair? And she had said, unless it's something like a garment where gauge is really particular, if you're just going to hold 1 thread just to add mohair in something, say like a shawl, go ahead and add it in. It's not going to make that big of a difference. Here, I don't even remember what the heck I was doing, but whatever it was, I think I was trying a fade, and I'll get into that in a second. But then we went into brioche, and you can just see when you're reversible in brioche, and you can marl in brioche, you can fade in brioche, and you're going to get all kind of different effects. So that was one of the things that we learned in the class. But the other thing that she taught, which I am so glad that I took it, was she explained 2 different ways to fade. And one is more a fade that's going to give you more of a striping. Depending on the colors that you use, you're going to see more of the striping. Again, more on the stockinette side than you will on the garter side. So that's something to think about. The other one, which is, I believe, the type of fading that she uses in the Comfort Cardigan, is a more subtle fade. And if you look at the Comfort Cardigan, you see that it's definitely more of a subtle fade than in the Find Your Fade, where you're literally almost striping and then going into the next color, striping again, and then going into the next color. With the Comfort Cardigan, you're not really doing that. You're doing more of a few rows and one row, and then a few less rows and 2 rows and a few less rows. And she gave us that formula. And why that helps me is because with the Comfort Cardigan, I'm doing the fade now, and there's going to come a point where you're going to do shaping and fading. And I'm like, how am I going to keep this all straight? Now I realize if you know the fading formula, or and anyone looking at the pattern, you can look at the pattern and see what the fading formula is. It's not a secret if you're looking at the pattern. I just didn't pick up on that. And so that was worth the price of admission. Not to mention at that point, and here's where the funny part came in. Do You Knit had given her a big bag of hedgehog fibers and I think Ushitita, a bunch of different skeins of yarn to play with. Plus, she was willing, a lot of people had brought their purchases from the market to class, asking, here are 7 skeins. Can I use this in a fade? How would you line them up? And that was a great experience for all of us because we all learned. And she explained why she would put, some of the people that had gotten fades, some of the yarns she had said, I probably wouldn't use this skein in here, and here's why. And it made sense. And she had a bag, oh, smart lady, had a bag and said, look how this one sort of ties it together. So what we ended up all doing was grabbing those skeins, running up to the market. She's like, I'm going to give you all a 15-minute break. Run up to Do You Knit, pay for the skeins, come back down, and let's redo this. Now, I didn't have a fade there. I came with bits and bobs. But did that stop me from going up and grabbing a couple of skeins of mohair? No. It was the last chance I was going to get into the market anyway. So I will show you in my haul which ones I got at the last minute and why I got them, because there was a reason. So that was my classes. That was my experience. I met so many people. And I've said it before, it is nothing new. It's nothing new to any of you. Knitters are the nicest people, the best people. So, there were several people who reached out either on the forums or on Instagram in particular, lost items, lost iPhone 10s, lost garments. And from what I know of the ones that I saw, almost everybody found their stuff. It was all turned in. When people didn't have something in class, people were, sure, use mine. That's just knitters. Knitters are just kind people. I didn't, it was so mobbed in there at one point on Friday. There was nobody complaining. There was no pushing, no shoving, it was just sort of like a big party. It was just like a big party where, the homeowner decided to cram his house full and everyone's trying to get to the food in the buffet. So people were passing stuff back. Oh, sure, you wanted this? Yeah, take a look at this one. It was great. It really was a party type atmosphere. I have met Stephen West before and at Rhinebeck, and oh God, that man must think I'm like a bigger idiot than I actually am, and that's pretty big anyway. This guy's got to be like, what is with this chick in a camera, because she can't work it. No how, no way. This past Rhinebeck, he was sitting on the ground. He was very gracious. My daughter went fangirl. She wanted a picture with him. And I was like, fine. And at that point, I had my big camera with the stupid lens. I had no clue how to work it all. And I'm like, all right, so we went over. And he was so, just not even kind. He was so gracious. And I said, would you mind? He was like, absolutely. And he stood with my daughter. And I'm trying to take the picture. And I'm looking through. And he just didn't say a word, just very graciously walked over and removed my lens cap. Talk about an embarrassing moment. Okay, so now that he knows that I'm not a photographer, hang on one second, let's see right it's working. Sorry, daughter came home. So he knows now that obviously I am not a photographer. So anyway, I go into the market Friday night and he's right by the door. And his booth actually was right by the door. Now, he had brought, and I think this is the first time, and I don't know if it's the first time in the States, but I believe it is the first time that he brought his shop, which is called Stephen and Penelope. It's located in Amsterdam. He brought it to Vogue Knitting Live. And they carry yarns that are specific to Europe and very difficult to find in the States. You have to really basically order them. I don't think they're sold here, is basically what I'm getting at. You have to order them from a site that sells them in Europe. So he brought three, and I don't want to mispronounce or whatever, but he brought three amazing lines of yarn. And he also had this big backdrop where you could have your book signed and take a photo. So I decided it would be really nice to take a picture with him to put on my vlog. So of course now, this time I have my little point and shoot. I'm good now. I'm good to go. And I have the flip up thing, so I can take a selfie and actually see on the screen. I don't have to guess or anything. Okay, I'm a professional. So I go over and I'm like, "Would you mind?" He's like, "Oh no, of course, absolutely." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Look, I'm going to take the picture." And I go to do this, and I realize I'm not even 5 feet tall, and this man is like gotta be 6 or more. I'm 6 feet, and I'm like trying to do this number and looking, and he's just like trying so hard not to laugh at me. So there was a gentleman there, and he stepped in very kindly and saved me. "Would you like me to take the picture?" I'm like, "Yes, please." Just take this thing out of my hand, okay? Take the picture. Let me get the hell out of here while I have any shred of dignity left. So he very kindly took the picture for me, and I think that may be my last photo op with Stephen West. I think if that man sees me again with a camera or come near him with a camera, I don't think he's going to be able to hold back the laughing, because it's just been that kind of an experience. But he is a gentleman. He is just so nice, humble and nice. And you just, sometimes you get these preconceived, I don't know, ideas that, once somebody hits a certain level of any kind of fame, and, they're famous to us. I don't know if they're famous in the out world. I don't know. But you kind of expect some sort of, I don't know, like they're stars or something, what you hear. Nothing. None of these knitting celebrities had any celebrity attitude about them. They were just the indie dyers. I met Beata, the genius behind Hedgehog Fibers. Lovely, nice, kind lady. Stephen West was as gracious and nice as could be. And the other Stephen that I wanted to mention was, I had taken KnitScents 2.0. And it was funny because, they tell you when you enroll in it that, you always kind of enroll because there's one teacher you're really excited about, and you want to take that class. And for me, it was Andrea Mowry, so I did take that. I don't remember who else at this point was in it. But one of the teachers was Stephen B. And the truth is, I was not that familiar with him. I did purchase one of his Pancini kits, which is still sitting. It's not a whip. I haven't started it, but the kit is still sitting. But I wasn't really familiar with him at all. I know he had done the Stephen and Stephen tour, but I hadn't followed it. I wasn't familiar with him. I didn't know his designs really very much. And I have to say, I loved Knit Stars. I learned from every single one of them. But out of everyone, I think he inspired me the most. To get out of my box, to get out of my comfort zone. There are no rules. I can't even explain how he communicated all of that. And I mean, as you can see, I'm still wearing black, a solid green, but I'm knitting now with color, and I'm adding color, and I'm adding texture, and I'm looking for different kinds of things now. And that's thanks to him. He had a booth there, and I had the opportunity to meet him and to thank him for that class and just tell him, you know, what it meant to me. And I thought he was going to bust into tears. He was so kind. He was just so kind and so just gracious about it, and really like thankful that he had touched me and changed how I looked at things. And that meant a lot to me, that, you know, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm really glad you enjoyed my class and whatnot, that he really obviously takes it to heart, and it's important to him that his, you know, I don't want to call them customers, but that his followers, or that his, you know, people that buy his patterns or follow him, or, you know, buy his yarns and follow his creativity, are important to him. And that meant a lot to me. That just said a lot. Now, I had purchased the Fezza kit, or for the Fezza Pancini, and you had the option of getting the tassels, and at first I wasn't a tassel person, so I didn't get them, and I couldn't find them online afterwards. And I was telling him this, and he's like, don't move. I have the tassels here. I'm going to find them for you. And he went searching, literally in suitcases and whatnot, and produced 4 tassels, because what happened was, after I took his class, I'm like, I want tassels on this. I'm not a tassel person, but this thing needs tassels. I want tassels on it. So anyway, I did get my tassels for it. So he was another person that I had met, and you can see in the vlog some of the designers and some new people, new creators. There was some sisters that take recycled fabric that is heading for landfills, and they recycle it into the most exquisite knitting bags that I've seen. And I did, on the vlog, put their website and their Etsy shop on there. They were lovely. So having said all of that, and having met, like I said, some of the nicest, best people ever, I'm going to get into the haul.